Welcome, everybody. My name is Maura Kautsky. I'm actually the president of Sales Xceleration, and welcome you to our 8th annual overview of what we see from the state of sales. It's one of our favorite things to share with the wider community because there's so many things that we continue to see happening consistently year over year, things that change. But most importantly, what we hope everybody walks away with from today is really understanding the good framework that you need as an organization to run a organized sales team. So let's jump right in and get started. So here is our agenda today. And of course, I have to tell you a little bit about who we are, just to level set what we do to capture all this data and who we are and what makes us the experts in what is required to run a well-organized sales team and organization. We're going to talk a little bit about what this assessment is. And then I'm going to start out with just a broad brush of just what's happening with small to mid-sized businesses in the last year and really continuing on this year. And then we'll dig into our trends, our 4 pillars that we call that really build the foundation for an organization. And then at the end, we've got some stuff that if you want to see how your organizations do or just continue to learn, that you can hit a QR code and learn more. So let's jump in. So who are we? For those of you that don't know, we are the pioneers that started the first fractional sales leader organization. Our founders were ahead of their time. Fractional leadership at that time was just really kind of just starting, and it was more of a gig worker. You were someone you just hired for doing a design or a task. And then the whole fractional thing kind of blew up over the years. And it's actually now 38% of the workforce. So it's common, particularly with COVID, where people really understood that fractional is a way to hire an expert for a period of time to make an improvement in your organization and at an affordable cost. So what do we do when we come in? We basically build a strategy, the methodology, the management of the team if needed, or we can just walk with whoever's managing the team. And then most importantly, we get the team set up for success. We call that our certified sales operating management system. So it's our system with the expertise, the art of their experience and knowledge that they bring to a client to turn it around. And speaking of our advisors, we are now actually up to 230. And we have generated, we're probably closer to over $3 billion of revenue over the course of the 15 years that we've been in business for small to mid-sized businesses. And we do it in all industries, but as you'll learn, that more of it is in the B2B vertical. Doesn't mean we don't help B2C, but primarily B2B. So let's step back. Last year was, everyone knows, a really challenging year. You add inflation, you add cost of goods into it, you add the just rapid, AI coming to the forefront. And we all know AI has been around, but just how it just quickly creeped in. And what it did is it put a lot of pressure on organizations. 41% of them didn't meet their goals, which is pretty significant. And basically 31% of them didn't meet their financial health or were underperforming. And you will notice that most businesses, if they don't make it in the first 10, max 20 years, they will be out of businesses. So these are businesses that are at that tipping point that they could be out of business. And a primary driver of these stats are they don't really have a solid foundation, process, and plan in place. We know there's other factors, rising costs, expenses, but at the crux of it is meeting the sales goals that they set out and developed at the beginning. So what does this mean? These numbers mean that without that sales system that I was talking about, they will consistently underperform. You could have a great year, but you're going to go backwards if you don't have a repeatable, sustainable process. And there's a lot of process tools you can buy out in the marketplace to really run your organization, but people have to really then know that there's some other things that you need to do within the sales organization that complement those to really get a company on track. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You got to have the right people in the right seats, those right processes. Otherwise, it becomes extremely difficult to once again achieve those goals. That poor infrastructure, you will be shocked as we talk about how many companies don't even have insight to, are they meeting their numbers? They can't even forecast. So it's kind of a critical component to really understanding the health of your organization. So we're going to talk about those root causes of what's happening within those organizations, or not happening is more what we'll be sharing today. So just want to kind of align with this is what our assessment, as we call the 4.0, it basically comes in and it confirms those gaps. One of the things we give you with the assessment is a gap list. So you very quickly know where you're scoring poorly, but then most importantly, where your largest gaps are, your biggest low-hanging fruit of things to fix. So who took this assessment? So these results are one person per company, and we pick the highest level, particularly who hires us is a CEO or president or a COO, or sometimes a sales leader in a larger organization. It may be a sales leader, but you can imagine many sales leaders don't want to raise their hand and say everything's broken because it's a reflection of them. And a lot of times, if it is the CEO, the president, CEO, they may have been a founder and they're sitting in that role of running the sales team. And that's probably one of the biggest things that we see is founders still leading the sales company or leading the sales division and not really being able to step back and manage the business the way they should. And so we go in and that's what we build for them. The team, the infrastructure, maybe put a new sales leader in place. So that's really critical. And we primarily serve small businesses that took this, the 1 to 100 million. Our sweet spot is kind of 5 to 30 on some of these results. And as I mentioned earlier, B2B is primary, it's 87%, and B2C is about 13%. And how many people have completed this assessment? It's 5,263 to be exact. And there are 54 questions. So it's a very thoughtful exercise for a company to really continue to dig under the layers. And so besides the broad categories, they're digging down into those categories and answering what they are or are not doing. So let's just jump in. So overall scores. So basically we rate everybody on a 4 scale, which is poor, below average, average, or excellence. And we don't rate them. I actually misspoke on that. They rate themselves. So like I said, those 54 questions, the way they answer them, they're tabulated and it gives them their score. As you will see, there is a lot of room for improvement within these organizations. And we're going to talk about where we see people have gone forward and where they've gone backwards this year compared to previous years. So let's level set. And then, so we talked about, let's go back again for a quick minute. So 76% said they did poor, 19% below average, and 4% average. We rarely see anybody really give themselves an excellent score in past years. We've had 1 or 2%, but it's very, very hard for a company to get that way, particularly when it's founder-led and that's not their core competency, or if it's a business that's been around for a long time and they just continue to go backwards. Our average business client tenure is really 10 to 20 years. So they're very mature businesses and they just go backwards and they lose all process or never really had one in the first place. And that's what they start to uncover. So let's go into those categories. So we have sales strategy. And keep in mind, strategy is where you have to start. Who are you serving? What is your value proposition? What are those sales messages? What is your competitors doing that you're not doing? And this is an area that we continue to see improvement in. It's still not good, as you can see, but we see so slow, consistent gains, particularly in people really fine-tuning their value proposition. And in this day and age, it's easier than ever to really get behind that by just listening to your clients, understanding what resonates with them, and really build that solid value proposition. So that's the area in sales strategy that we do think people have improved year over year. And as we jump onto methodology, that's the area that has been the most volatile. It's the area that we consistently see over year kind of go up and down. And the key driver of this is a lack of documented sales processes. You would be shocked at how many sales teams don't really even understand, do we have a process? What has to occur each stage of that process? And that's so important to forecast. If you don't know what stage you're in, or even if there is stages, you're just guessing. Based on, I had a great call, so yeah, it's going to close, versus have I done all the proper steps that it's required to really drive it over. But most importantly, they don't have a CRM, and we continue to uncover that year over year, is how many companies are either functioning without a CRM or they have one that is built that doesn't align with those sales processes. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then analysis. This is the data part of the business. What is your goal setting? Does it align? Do your sales team's goals actually roll up to your corporate goal? You'll be shocked at how many people's don't. They don't do the math on that to say, oh, yes, we gave Joe this goal and Susie this goal and 2 other salespeople, but that's still not at our goal. So really making sure they're doing that, getting that proper forecasting and mapping. And then in here is the use of AI tools. It has allowed this area to improve because people can use quick analysis in AI tools to continue to help them understand that they didn't have at their fingertips in the past. We'll talk about that too. And then sales organization. This is all the people part of it. It's your hiring, your onboarding, your training, compensation plans, all the things that really are focused on the employee. And this one is really, it makes improvements and it goes backwards. But the biggest issue is wrong person, wrong seat. And how companies try so hard and try too long to make people work in those roles. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing underneath that. So this is kind of level setting. These are what we call our 4 pillars. And now we're going to kind of dive under the hood for each one of them. So strategy. This year, 54% of clients or prospects or people we've talked to gave themselves 54%. So a little bit more than half. This is an improvement. So the scores going down are actually an improvement. I know it's kind of obvious, but we like to state it. And they're getting better, not at all of them, but like I said, better at the value proposition. But it's that ICP, once again, buyer persona, sales stories, competitor differentiators. So let's keep going. So where we're seeing people are getting better at is the ICP, but we are shocked by how many people are still out in the marketplace without their ideal candidate profile. And what is the ideal candidate profile? That is the industry you're serving, the sub-industry, the size of the company, the geography, maybe even the employee base if you're selling a software that supports that. This clarifies to your team who exactly to pursue, that they're not wasting efforts and time and energy on people that don't align with who's going to buy. And it boosts your win rates. The more focused and targeted you are, the better off they are. So we saw a 9% improvement, but it's still too high that 58% of companies are out there wild, wild west and just letting their salespeople call on each other. And I don't have a slide on this, but the next thing that we are seeing, and it's over 50% also, they may know the ICP, but they don't know the buyer persona in that organization. And that's the person that can make that decision. Are they even talking to the right person? And most importantly, when they're talking to them, are they telling them what problems they can solve for them and how they can be the hero? For those of you that are familiar with Donald Miller, Story Brown, and our CEO has podcasts with him, you really need to make your buyer the hero, that whatever they're buying, they've solved a problem for the company. They're going to impact the company, and particularly in our findings, sales. So this is really an area that trickles down then. If they don't have an ICP, then they don't have a buyer persona, and it just continues to enhance the lack of ability for a salesperson to drive the growth that they need to for the organization. So communicating your unique. This is the value proposition. Like I said, it's getting better, but boy, oh boy, it's still not good. And it not only is the value proposition of the organization, but it's the sales messaging. What works for your salespeople? And there are so many tools today and insights to uncover what's resonating with the clients to help really fine tune this messaging and not leaving it up to your salespeople. And always your top salesperson always doesn't have all the answers either. A lot of people lean in. You've got to aggregate the data, look at how consistently, if you have a team, or if you have to go to the founder at this point and get the data, but then it's refined over time as market and features change. And we'll talk about that too, because that's another thing that's happening is if you don't have a playbook for your strategy, you really have set your team up for success. And that's what strategy involves into. It's a playbook that they use that has to constantly evolve. We're in a rapidly changing market with AI and product features to keep up with your competition. And that's something that a company needs to constantly do. And that's by good listening, observing, and getting clarity on where your competitor's going and just how you're growing within the organization. And that's at the crux of communicating your unique, is that most companies don't have a playbook to really answer this for their team. And then most importantly, they don't keep it current. Okay, so now we're going to jump to methodology. This is the category that I said that is the most volatile year over year. It will go spike really high for poor, and then it'll drop down low. And this year, it's still, most of them are rating themselves bad. And we consistently see sales process to be one of the things that most companies do not have. I would say it's our highest top 3 things, with a CRM system not whether they have one, but if they have one set up properly. We still, when we work with clients, put CRMs in about 50% of them. And then the other 50%, we're fixing it, like I mentioned before, to align with their sales processes. But this is also giving clarity to the team of what territories, what coverages, maybe what ICPs that they're doing, really lack of clarity so the sales team is not tripping over each other. And then marketing alignment and use of AI. We have continued to evolve our assessment to zone in on these areas because it's one of the biggest areas that we continue to see can be the most value to sales methodology and actually a well-run sales organization. So let's talk about the process or lack of, like I mentioned before. So 73% don't have a sales process. It's startling to me that they don't. And if they do have one, you'll talk to their sales reps. Most of them don't really understand what needs to occur in the order of that sales process step. So what's the best way to convert that client? When do you do a demo? When do you do this? When do you put the proposal in front of them, or do you go right to contract? So learning what works for your business. And that's a really big component that an organization falls down on. We continue to see a lot of opportunity for these organizations to know who their most important customers are. And you don't see a lot of companies have an account-based management strategy. They are not looking within their current prospects or clients for upsell, cross-sell, what's the best thing to give, to offer to that client based on their other lookalike clients. And that's something we just don't see a lot of today, that a good account-based strategy, not only with their existing customers, but new ones. And we'll talk about that. They're shopping, they've showed up, they know what they want. So you've got to kind of meet them where their conversation is to start. So we talked about marketing, and I said we added more questions recently in the past years. And as a marketer and a salesperson, this is the area that we used to be the old, marketing, sales doesn't like marketing. They give me crappy leads, and marketing says sales doesn't do anything with us. But the good news is that has improved a lot. We do see that they're partnering, and 67% are partnering. You would put this out 5 years ago, and it would be in the 20s. And it's really a must-have in any organization. The marketing has got to really help drive those leads. But where we really see the biggest opportunity there is that communication flow happening back and forth within the teams. So marketing giving real clarity to sales on what are these leads? Are these leads that you need to educate more? Are they a little more educated when they came to them? What's the source of the lead? Something coming in from a general keyword search versus maybe a webinar. It's a very different level of knowledge. And so that's what they need to inform sales on. And then the sales team needs to come back and tell marketing, hey, these aren't converting. Here's where the obstacles are, so they can get better at the messaging and the communication, or the webinar that they created, or the landing page that it goes to. So that dialogue is super important for these organizations. But the bad thing that's not happening today, even though they're working tighter together, is that they don't track the ROI. So what's the cost per lead, the cost per, just getting an appointment, the cost to basically all the way to conversion, so that you really know, do you have the marketing dollars to spend on it, and then understand what it does cost. So a B2B organization, they can only, maybe one could say we're a SaaS company for $30, and there could be a very sophisticated product where we're like, it's 500, 1,000, 2,000. So, but until you both work together and establish what that is, you're also just wasting marketing's dollars and time so they can be effective. So I wanted to spend a little bit more time on this because it's what we're really seeing and learning. That's shared goals, messaging, alignment and tracking, coming together really makes a difference for a sales organization to be effective, and a marketing team. They are a partnership. Okay, sales analysis. This is an area of the organization that is those data piece that I mentioned before. It is really the part that teams really fall down the most on. This is our worst area year over year, but it's actually making slight improvements this year. And it says, like I mentioned before, setting the right goals and quotas, tying it back to the sales team, but also really understanding, where are your sales coming from? Companies don't step back when they put a sales goal together and go, we're going to bring this much in from existing clients by cross-selling, upselling, actually getting the analysis and understanding what is the likelihood of that client to buy product A, B, or C. Which one should the salesperson pitch? Who are those new clients? Is there maybe a new industry, a new vertical that we need to open? What are we going to do to just meet that goal versus stacking a bigger number on our salespeople, but now really digging behind and looking to see what are those activities, what are those things we need to do, how do we think we're going to meet those numbers? And most companies fall down on, as well as they're not looking at metrics and reporting and really understanding where that's going after they do establish it. They may come up with the plan, but then how well are they tracking it? So we talk about that a lot. Actually, it's shocking to me. There's another one. There's 65% have no sales goals. They just really kind of hope they grow. They may go, well, we were shooting for 10% growth over last year or 20 or some number. So they have a rough number, but they've really not, like I said, documented it, put how are they going to meet those goals? And then they don't roll it up to the sales reps. So does the goals that you give each of your sales rep, if they even gave them one, sometimes it's just go sell, is really, really important. And the number three piece on here is just making sure that do they have the processes in place to determining those sales quotas? You can't give a sales rep a bunch of goals without the processes, the industries, the direction they need to go to meet that goal. A wild, wild west is not a way to run a sales team, but we do see that in so many of our clients still today. It's one of those areas that continues to be why we're in serving organizations, to really build a stable foundation. And it starts with just proper planning at the front end with your data and your numbers. And then on top of that, leadership doesn't have, like I mentioned before, those real-time insights into current sales performance. 61% of them say that they don't have a clue. Their sales leaders are coming in, they're giving them maybe numbers of how we're going to do this month, but if they don't have a process in place, it's more on talking to that sales rep, Joe. Well, what do you think? You think you're going to meet your goal this month? And Joe will be like, yeah, I had a great call. Yeah, I think I'm going to pull that one over the line. Versus knowing those gates, knowing where they're at in the sales process, and really being able to truly forecast and tell the leadership of the organization what your number will really be that month, that quarter. If it's a longer sales cycle, when is it going to come in? So it is so important that organizations really step back and have the data in the systems, have the sales processes in the systems to really be able to give accurate forecasting and just insights into the business to know what is working and not working. And we continue to see that to be an area that companies and leaders just feel very caught off guard by. Okay, sales organization. So this is, like I said, the people part of the business. And at the core of what the 70% poor scores is, companies just have the wrong people in the wrong seat. We all want the right person in the right seats. They hold on for them too long, but sometimes it may be the reverse. They didn't onboard them well and they're not training them well. Like I said, if you don't have a playbook, you're not keeping them as current as they need to be on what you really want them to be selling and what you need them to be saying. You're actually setting your sales team up for success. And what does that mean they do? They walk out the door. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And this is just the coaching. How well is the manager working with them? And a lot of times if the sales leader is the CEO, this is the thing that always suffers because they have so much to do in a given day. And this is the area that they find they have the least time to do. Not that they don't want to, the desire is there, but it's the thing that a lot of times goes on the back burner. And those team and individual meetings, not having those consistently to really remove roadblocks to help their leaders and to help or the team members, whether or not they're in the leadership role. So here's what we're seeing. It gets worse than just when you kind of peel back the layers. 73% have no onboarding. It's amazing to me what we hear because we have a recruiting arm of our business, Sales Xceleration Recruiting, where people are like, well, we hired someone to sell. They just know how to sell. And we're like, well, yes, that's true. They have the skill set that we believe, we know works for selling. But if you don't give them all those tools that they need, properly onboard them, let them shadow with people, the sales manager walking beside them. You can see 70%, 6% of sales managers don't shadow. They don't go in and help them and hold their hand. They don't give them onboarding training. You're setting that person up who is very high potential to not perform in your organization. And what does that do? It demotivates them. It makes them feel like this is the right culture fit. And a lot of times it's not even a reflection of your culture, but that's where it goes. And 30% resign in the first 30 days. That's what we see with the sales rep. And sometimes they're not able to do the job, but 9 times out of 10, it's because there's no onboarding. There's no management walking with them, no training, no really setting them up for success. And they see that, and they're not going to want to stay with a company that's not setting them up for success. So that is our biggest thing that we see in just the sales organization part of the business. And that's where we come in and really lean in and get these things built, shaped for an organization so that when they hire that A player, they make sure that they're sticking around. So talking about hiring, a lot of companies don't plan nor have a budget to hire great talent. They're very reactive. Like I said, they hold on to B or C players because they think, oh, if I don't have somebody in here, even if it's a poor salesperson, it's better than nothing. And what they really need to be doing is stepping back and always being prepared. What sets the good from the great in a sales organization is they're always networking, talking to possible candidates so that they always have an A team. They're always prepared for that growth or success that they want to do. And, just maintaining connections of someone that they've interviewed before so that when the right role is there, keeping that door open. And so it's just a thing that we don't see enough companies do, but the good ones are. They're really constantly mining that next person on their team for when they're just growing or when they know that they possibly can have a replacement. They're ahead of it so that they don't have to hold on to those B and C players longer than they need to because they got the A person already in the pipeline behind them. So our little analogy, if you want a full boat of great fish, you don't wait until you're out of bait to start fishing, right? So you've got to really go forward and really plan, constantly be doing that to build that solid team. So part of organization is AI tools. Boy, oh boy, is this every day it's in our face. You can't walk away from it. It's actually many new reports from other organizations continue to say that we are uncovering that they're not using it throughout the sales process. So we know that like 90% of companies are using sales AI. So just a level set, I'm not discounting that it's really rapidly going, very much driven by CEOs. A lot of reports are saying the CEO is trying to create that strategy and go for it. But what we're seeing is that 80% are not using AI tools through the sales process. And that's super important that they step back because there's functional tools, right? Call recording, things that can help in accounting and different parts of the business that are very process oriented, but there's so many ways that AI tools can help in the sales world. The good news is there's a small percentage that have identified that we really need to 5% start looking at them. And this is where our advisors will tell us that when they're talking to clients, they're overwhelmed by it. They don't know where to start. They're still trying to just get comfortable with AI. And so when you have all those reservations, it's hard to go right to sales. But if you could, where's the biggest opportunity for people to use AI in sales? And this is coaching. Assess call quality, suggest way to improve, help with follow-up. It's really interesting today when most shoppers show up, they are 92% of them have already looked at your competitors. They're informed. We're not in a world today where you're teaching about your product, what it solves for them. So we really have to be prepared. And so coaching your team to ask those questions. What do you already know? Who are you looking at? It's going to get them better at being able to close that lead. It also allows them to personalize. 70-80% expect personalized follow-up. You'd be shocked. I get so many emails, you can tell are AI generated today, that are just those plug and play communications where they don't really understand me or my business, what my role is in the company. And it's a turnoff. And the ones that are very impressive is you can tell that it's the tool, but someone's taken a little more time to feed the communication, to really personalize it to me, like I said before, to solve a pain and let me be a hero. And those are the calls I'll take. On the lead generation side, there's so many tools out there to help warm up the lead, to get better list, focus on that ICP, focus on that buyer persona. And companies really have a great opportunity, once again, to lean into these, but to make them work synergistically from marketing to sales. I also see too many companies stick in a lead gen tool. And if you don't have your sales process cleared up, you're basically wasting money, because the two have to work harmoniously together to really be effective. And that is the biggest thing we're seeing is people are buying tools, and we're hearing this from our partners, and canceling them. It's because they haven't fixed the sales end of it. And then productivity, like I said, recording calls, gaining CRM sites, the beauty now of pulling data out of CRM sites, accounting software that people can learn about their business is incredible. But there's more importantly, just things to help your team be productive from a sales standpoint. So imagine today, you used to take notes by hand. Some still do, maybe important points, but you can't listen. What do we stop listening after about 10 minutes, and then we click off, and then we click back on. You miss things. So AI fills those gaps for you, and you realize, oh, I didn't hear that person say that. And oh, yes, I need to go back and address that. So it's really an incredible tool for someone when they're really working to personalize their next communication in the sales process. Okay, so to wrap up, and I know I'm a fast talker, and I would be happy to take any questions if anybody has any. It's really important that you build the foundation, and we like to share this information because at the end of the day, our foundation, our 4 pillars, are the things that you need to do to have a well-run sales organization. So you can just look through this and really look deep within your organization and go, are we doing those? And you can fix it yourself. You can call us to help. If you just want to come in and get an assessment from us, we'd be happy to give you to. It reports the gaps list. It's just the place to start, is to really looking at how well are we doing those things in the organization and know what needs to be fixed, so that you are building a repeatable sales process that really drives growth year over year over year. Having one great year and going backwards the next year is usually a victim of not having a process, or well as if you're growing too fast, it can eventually catch up to you year 2 or 3 from now, because you will start to see you don't have a process in place. So we're kind of talking today about all the things you can do to improve your execution. A couple things that's really, really important is use a CRM, use it regularly. But before that, you really do need to build the process. You need to build the strategy, which is the messaging, the ICP for your team, so that they know who they're going after in the CRM, who they're upselling to, who their new opportunities are that they're putting in the CRM, giving them clear insights to their goals and the data that they're having, and then equipping your team to be coached, to train, to evolve, and to grow. I mean, who doesn't want to learn and grow in an organization? And so making sure those things are happening. So those are the kind of the areas that if you were going to start tomorrow and you don't take the assessment, that what I would lean into and really look deeper, because we see those things are some of the top performers of derailing an organization. And we actually do a presentation that is the top 10 sales drivers, and all these things I mentioned are part of that. And you can see that with Advisor in your market, and we have some of the stuff on our website. So key takeaways, continuing on, is building that high-performing team, be ahead of it. Role clarity is something I didn't touch on, but you would be shocked when you go in organizations how people don't know who's really responsible. Everyone thinks they're responsible for the same thing, or no one thinks they're responsibility for it. And then do you have the right incentive plans in place, incentivizing the right behaviors? Many companies don't update them. They don't look to see if it aligns with their new revenue goals, the things they're trying to sell. So when you're really looking at your team, these are some of the things that you need to do. And then just constantly be hiring proactively. So final thought on this. The companies that outperform will not be the ones that are simply work harder, because we don't see that to be true. They are the ones that build those strategies, that operating discipline and talent bench, produce consistent results. And that is really at the critical. There is a process and a methodology behind this. And when you have the right people in there that have that have done it, the art of it all, you put those two together, that art and science, it really can build a high-performing sales organization and team for a company. So this is what we do. That's what we do. We create that assessment. We give you the gaps. Then our advisor gives you the solution, the expert execution, and it results in growth. It sounds simple, but that is the simplest version of the process. It's obviously always customized to your business, yours. You can teach people a lot about products and services, but it's really hard to teach people how to build a whole process if they've not done it before and they don't have the tools and the framework for it. So what you can do next, if you're interested, You can scan the QR code, get a copy of our State of Sales AI book, our ebook. We also have an AI book if you want that one. We have a sales agility assessment that is the whole crux of this that you can take. There is a 1.0 that you can get on our website, but it's only 10 questions. The 4.0 is the 54 questions. It's really going to give you that dive under the hidden gaps list. You can just scan that and someone will send you one on the team. Promise you it's not a sales pitch. It's just really there to help you understand it. And we'll reach out and see if you want any help, diagnosing your problems that are within your areas, because that's really what we're here to do, is to serve the small to mid-sized business community. That is our niche. That's where we excel. And that's where we've been able to contribute the kind of growth I mentioned at the beginning to these organizations and keep those businesses in business. And that's really as a servant leadership company, which is what we're always striving for at the end of the day. So that is it. I'll look to see if I have any comments or questions. I do have one. Someone asked me, is there certain industries that we saw go backwards this past year? And there is. It's a great question, actually. We haven't done a deep dive in here on industries, but manufacturing, and you can imagine a lot of it has to do with those that have cars and fleet and stuff. The cost of gas, just the inflationary cost to run their businesses really set them back. And then they see the much, much longer sales cycle. And the same thing in technology. A lot of them are seeing a lot of shopping more now with that educated buyer, a little gun shy and taking a leap to start using it and then getting it sticky. A lot of companies in the technology space will give freebies or outs in the contracts, and they see some people taking that. So those are kind of some key trends that we're seeing, but we will continue to share more insights on that. So great question. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time today and have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye.